Everyone, again, thanks so much for sticking with us. I know it's been a tough full afternoon, and now we have our Admission One-on-One session where the AVP and Dean of Admission, Gil Villanueva, here at the University of Richmond is going to speak, and we'll hear again from Anthony and Katie. Catherine, I almost called you Katie Beth, I apologize. And Catherine are going to share information about Randolph-Macon and VCU, respectively. And hopefully the information that you take from this session you can apply in a more broader sense to some other schools. So we've got 3 different schools, all Virginia-based, but hopefully they can kind of give an insight as to, for example, VCU, how you can apply some of the things that they're looking at to other larger public institutions. The same thing for the University of Richmond in terms of a medium-sized private institution, and so forth and so on. So I'm going to open the floor. Please leave enough time for lots of questions. I know that everyone has a lot of things on their minds. Okay? Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, welcome back, Spiders. Welcome home. Happy to see you all here. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting all of you. Some of you I work with, so it's nice to see familiar faces. So it is my pleasure to kind of kick us off. And just to give you a quick background, at least for me, I've had the good fortune of having served some really selective private institutions across the country. And by and large, most of them are liberal arts schools and one PhD granting institution. And I think at the end of the day, all of us, and I believe my colleagues on the table will tell you, at the end of the day, we're looking for the right fit, the right match. And that is trying to identify those students who really will benefit most from the kind of academic and social opportunities available on our respective campuses. So for me, I look at my job, and along with my colleagues Maria and Jess, as being really the front end of the advancement office. If we do a great job in identifying the right fit and the right match, they will attend the University of Richmond, they will be happy at the university, they will graduate in 4 years, and within 6 months to a year, they're going to do some excellent things. And of course, they're going to think fondly of their experience on campus. So we feel by doing so, we are helping advance the university. So that just gives you a broad perspective in terms of what I believe, what most admission offices truly, what our key task would be, and that is identifying the right fit. For the University of Richmond, and many of you are very, very familiar with us. So this is really silly. How many of you have received newsletters, profiles about the class? So, maybe about half of you. So maybe I'll just give you a pretty broad view then, because not everyone raised their hands. So this past year, we had 9,426 students who applied for admission for 770 spaces for the entering fall class. So obviously a lot more people applying for the spaces that we have available. And I was just mentioning to friends from Long Island, the Grillos, that over 80% deemed to be competitive for admission. In other words, we have a very self-selecting pool. So over 80% we deem to be some of the better students in the States and abroad, as evidenced by courses taken right throughout high school, their grades, their GPA and/or rank, if rank is still available, and of course test scores. Well, as you can imagine, we can't admit, let's say out of 180 students, we're only looking for so many. So we will look for other things in their application that would lead us to think that they will be a true match, true fit socially as well, and they'll contribute something to the university. So we will be very interested in their essays, their recommendations, and that will give us an idea of their personal character, personal qualities that they might have that would lead us to think that, someone will be a good match for us given the kind of institution that we have here at Richmond. Then we will look into what they do in and out of the classroom. Hope it's all legal, right? So we're going to be looking into your activity sheet. Many students now will afford us an activity, almost like a resume type of fact to these sheets that they will provide. And we're not always interested in, quote, well-rounded students, right? We're not always thinking about, oh, how many activities can you join throughout 4 years? Sometimes we're interested in angular students, and that is those students who maybe do 1 or 2 things, but boy, they're really good at it. So in many ways, the analogy that we like to use in our office is that we're looking to build an orchestra each and every year. And if all of a sudden, everyone's a percussionist or everyone is just playing the wind, well, it's really not going to be an orchestra. So we're looking for a variety there as well. So after that, we're going to make some pretty hard decisions. We have a full committee system, right? I, along with other members of the community, of my office, will lead committee. And because so many are self-selecting, we do find ourselves spending a lot of time making some, deliberating and making some hard decisions in the end, because as much as we would love to admit all of the wonderful students applying to Richmond, there's simply not enough space. So this year we offered admission to 3,080 total students for the class of 2015. So I'll begin with that and then field questions after. Anthony.
I'm Anthony Ambrogi from Macon College, and I'm not going to repeat everything that Gil said, although I think a lot of the philosophy between as far as how University of Richmond looks at students is very similar. I don't think we are a similar kind of institution in the sense that we are a liberal arts and sciences college. And we do very much want to get to know as much about each applicant that goes through the process. We are a fairly small college, as colleges go. We have a little over 1,200 students total, and our applicant pool is a little bit smaller as a result. So for this incoming freshman class, our target was to bring in roughly about 380 to 390 new freshmen. So it's a relatively small group as colleges go. We had about 4,300 applications for those spots, so we still had a pretty large applicant pool, and I think that's, not to go too far off topic, but I think that's something that's happening. More and more students are applying to more and more colleges, and that's just kind of a sign of the time to some extent. It's looking like we're actually going to end up bringing closer to between 390 and 400 freshmen by the time fall comes around, so we've had a pretty good year this year. The way that we do it in our office, and there are a lot of the territorial manager, and then all of them end up coming to my desk. The ones that are easy decisions, we say yes or we say no. But there's always a pretty large group kind of in the middle. That's it could go either way, and that's when a lot of times we end up going back to kind of a smaller committee structure. We don't have the entire group of the committee, but a smaller subgroup of the counselors will meet in the committee and talk about some of the questionable ones. That's kind of the really short version of what we do. There's a much longer, complex version that I'm not going to bore you with because we'd be here for half an hour, but that's the short version. Because we are a small institution, we really do try to get to know students very well. So reading the essays, reading the recommendations, getting to know what the students do inside and outside of the classroom is very important to us. We do also have the opportunity for students to interview with one of the counselors one-on-one. Again, because we are fairly small, we are able to do that. If I had the applicant pool of a VCU or another very large institution, we probably wouldn't be able to do it logistically, but we're small enough that we can. So we really do try to get to know students very personally through the process. I'd say probably about a third of the students who go through the admissions process will do an interview at some point or another during their college search, maybe very early, maybe very late, but at some point or another during the process. And that's another way for us to get to know the person and how they are going to be a fit for the institution. I think all of you heard me say that in the first session, the ranking session when I was here, so that's very important to us and to most private colleges, really any college for that matter, is getting the right fit between student and institution. So we're very cognizant of that. So those are a few things about us. A couple of things just as far as our process, a couple things just quickly about the school, and then I'll turn it over to Catherine. We are a relatively small college, like I said. We very much pride ourselves on having a lot of personal attention inside the classroom. Probably the thing that's a little bit more unique about us compared to some other colleges is our calendar. We have a one-month January term in between the fall and spring semester. That's probably the most different part about us. There are still some other colleges out there that do that, but far fewer than there used to be. And there's only a couple in the Virginia area. And so it's part of the regular school year. It's part of the tuition that you pay. It's not an extra term. It's just part of the regular year. But during that January term, students can either take a class on campus like they normally would, or we offer a number of study abroad courses during that time, and a lot of students will do internships during that time. So it's a time for students to do something kind of over and above the everyday classroom experience, and we really try to push experiential learning for our students, and that January term allows us to do it. And that's probably the most different, the most unique part about us. We are completely undergraduate college. We don't have any graduate students there. We don't have a graduate school. We have a lot of students who will pursue graduate degrees after leaving Enrollment, a very high percentage actually. Typically, within 5 years, between half and 2/3 of our graduating class will be in a graduate program. So a lot of them are looking to get upper level degrees later on down the road. I'll be happy to answer more questions at the end. I'll turn it over to Catherine to talk about BCU.
I'm kind of on the opposite ends of things. Of course, Virginia Commonwealth University, we're here in Richmond too, but we are very different from the University of Richmond. We're a large public university that's further downtown, considered an urban campus. And of course, being a larger institution with 23,000 undergraduates, we have a lot more applications coming in. So this year we had over 14,000 applications for about 3,600 spots. So our review process is a little bit different because of that. Our face-to-face time with the students really is out when we are recruiting, going into high schools, talking to them at college fairs. And during the review process, the way that generally works is we have a staff of admissions counselors. I am one of those. Alfonso over here, he's open and can answer questions too. He's an admissions counselor as well. He's here with me today. We generally are the people that review the applications first when they come in, and then it moves on to one of our associate directors and eventually to our director of admissions. So we don't formally sit down on committee, but the application does go through several hands before a final decision is made. Because of the volume of applications we receive, our review process is a little bit different than what you've heard. Our two main components that we're looking at are the high school transcripts and test scores. Generally, those are the two things that I know you guys look at as well. We unfortunately do not offer interviews as part of the admissions process. We do not require an essay. We do require a personal statement, which is different than an essay. But the personal statement to us is just more so for a chance for the students to reach out and have a voice on the application. So when we're looking at the high school transcripts, what's really important to us is the rigor, what classes the students have taken compared to what's offered to them and how well they've done in those classes. And then of course the test scores are pretty straightforward. We use what's called a sliding scale. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or if I'm going a little bit too far, but that is a piece that we do use, and we tell students that. What that means is that students who have a very competitive GPA do have a little bit more room as to where their SAT scores can fall and vice versa. So if you were to look at the middle 50% numbers for us each year, you would notice that there's a large range, and that would be a reason why you would see such a large range of students being accepted with varying SAT, ACT, and then GPAs as well. So again, about 3,600 students coming in this year. We did have a great year this year in admissions. I don't know if that has anything to do with a little bit of basketball, but we have a lot of students excited about coming this fall. In fact, we have just now are finally able to say that we have seen a very big increase in our yield. What that means is the number of admissions offers that we put out there, we've seen more students than ever responding to that offer. So we are excited about that. Let me think. We do also have graduate programs and professional programs. Some of our programs that will require a little bit of a different admissions process. At BCU, you may know this, but we are the #1 public arts school in the country. So our arts programs do have a slightly different application process. You use the same application, you're reviewed academically and have to meet those standards. But you also will have a portfolio piece to your application or an audition, so that's something to be aware of if your student is thinking about art school. And then of course, our School of Engineering has a little bit different qualifications when it comes to those math and science classes and scores on their SAT or ACT. So I'm not sure if I kind of covered what we're looking for, but yeah. If you have questions, again, I'm here to answer those. Yeah?
What about the student who is, you had mentioned the sliding scale,
yes,
what about the student who has mediocre scores across the board in the tests and his GPA?
I mean, I think with any student, not just for a student that was looking at BCU, you have to kind of look at your student's academic profile compared to the schools that they're interested in, and that's just across the board for any university that a student is considering. I mentioned the sliding scale really because people look at our middle 50%, which I can tell you, if that kind of gives you an idea, the middle 50% of our applicants had between a 3.2 and a 3.8. So that's middle 50%, so 25% of students fall below and above that. That's a lot, that's a big range. And there's often question as to why that is the case. And so generally in our office, and I would be willing to bet in a lot of admissions office, we're going to put a lot more weight on what the student's done in the classroom than how they are as test takers. I won't speak for you guys, but that's definitely in our office the case. So if your student is working hard in the classroom and taking rigorous courses, they have a little bit more room as to where those test scores can fall, and that was kind of the point of saying that.
And I think your last point is similar to us and to a lot of schools, even a lot of the competitive, more highly selective schools are going to put more emphasis on what a student does day in, day out throughout all 4 years of high school. We recognize the SAT, the ACT is a snapshot. It's 4 hours out of a student's life on a Saturday morning of all things. So, we certainly recognize that. Having said that, different colleges, of course, are going to have different standards of what SATs or ACTs is going to be acceptable, just based on the pool, the applicant pool they have coming in. But I think most of my colleagues in the state of Virginia, at least, and probably beyond, would say that the higher emphasis is always on what a student's doing in the classroom. That's usually a better predictor as to what they're going to do in our classrooms.
Just quickly, were you all able to hear the question? Friends in the back, in the rear? Yes? So we probably don't need to repeat the question, you think? We're okay? Thumbs up? Thumbs up.
So the profile of the high school they attend, then, by all three of you, are considered?
Absolutely.
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 And in fact,
they come in, yeah. I mean, you get the student's profile, the profile of the school, and you have the transcripts right there. So you know it was offered to the student and what the student enrolled in.
And in many ways, a lot of institutions will look at your student within the context only of his or her secondary school. So our question is, how did your student take advantage of his or her situation? We never expect that they have taken every AP, honors, IB, whatever else, accelerated, but we want to see some. Because studies show that the best predictor of success will be what my colleagues are talking about, how they perform in 4 years of high school. So we will be interested, and many institutions will even count. We know we count in the Office of Admission at Richmond how many APs were offered, right? So what we're trying to do is try to understand what is a typical load at that institution. And we also rely on the ratings of the guidance counselors. As you know from the, or may not know, from the common application, we will ask guidance counselors to rate. Is it a most demanding curriculum? Is it a very demanding? Is it a demanding? Is it an average or below average? So as you can imagine, a lot of institutions are more interested in students who have taken at the very least a demanding or college preparatory course load.
And part of the reason why we and a lot of other colleges split up our admission staff so that they are in a territory is to get to know the high schools in that region, so that they understand the differences, not just between the public and private schools in that region, but even among the publics and among the privates within that region. And that way they get to know them very well, they get to build relationships with the guidance counselors, they get to understand that high school, so that when they're reading the application, they can put that student in the context of that school as well.
Your question? And then your next.
I've got two actually real quick. School profiles, are you expecting parents to submit that, or are you expecting the schools to submit that? Because there is no place on the common application. I'm sorry?
Yeah, it usually comes from the school. They usually include it
so
with
the students should be requesting their school to send that along with the transcript then?
Most high schools will send it automatically with the transcript.
The other question I have is, you mentioned an activity sheet versus a transcript. I mean, when you're getting that number of applications in, are you looking for them to have their activities on their transcript? Or are you looking for a separate piece of documentation? Like a resume, everything's supposed to be on one page?
Yeah,
so.
some schools do not even include activities anymore on the transcripts.
What would y'all like to see?
So we fully expect students not to be shy and let us know, otherwise we can't guess. So we tell students, and as emblematic of your generation, the millennials, you all are on 24/7. You guys are doing a lot of things all at the same time, and of course in full partnership with your parents. So what we expect then is just let us know, but more importantly, not just what you do, but your level of involvement. It's very easy to say, oh, I do X, Y, and Z, but what if you only do it for, let's say, an hour a month, as opposed to an activity whereby you're fully committed, you're spending a lot of time and energy, and you made an impact, right? You know, we had candidates back in the day, sometimes will just tell us, oh, I was part of this committee. Well, I don't know. How would I know? But what's helpful is a descriptor of that committee. Lo and behold, you're one of, let's say, 5 in the whole school, chosen, appointed for that committee. Now that carries more weight.
I think, and also kind of like how to submit that might have been part of it. It's not going to come necessarily with the high school transcripts. It's going to vary by school and how they prefer to receive that information. I will tell you, at VCU, and I'd be willing to bet some larger schools, the less paper you're sending us and the more you can put on the application we provided to you, the better, because we're getting a lot.
But see, the common application is so brief that that's an issue.
Right, well, and so if you can use our application and we have a section for that, that's wonderful. You know, that would help us just because, again, we want to get everything about you. And if you want to send it on a piece of paper too, that's great, but it would put as much on the actual application as you can to make sure the information is all there. And if you send additional information, you know, be mindful of having the same name on everything and all that good stuff. I know it sounds really silly, but you know, you want things to match up.
Sir, your question.
Not to open up a huge can of worms, but
Next question.
how do you all evaluate the difference between the AP courses and dual enrollment? I know we've had a child already go through the system, and it was just such an argument of what she should take versus what her friends took, et cetera, et cetera. She made out okay with all the AP she took, 7 of them, which is that's the way where it was supposed to go, and she's done really, really well. However, her friends get into college and they already got their 21 credits. They coasted through the dual enrollment classes. So still, with our second one, what do we take? Do we put them in the AP classes, or does it matter? Or what's your stance on it?
You're going to have different answers. You guys want to begin?
I think no one wants to begin, but I want to begin. I'll dive into it. And I think this is a classic answer. I said this in the 9th and 10th grade group. A lot of times the answer to some of these questions it depends, which is a highly unsatisfactory answer for you, but it's the truth, and it is going to depend from institution to institution. From where I sit and the school for which I work, I think there's 2 answers to that question. One is an admissions answer, and one is a credit answer. Because we have our standards for receiving credit at Randolph Macon. You get a 4 or 5 on any of the AP exams, you're going to get credit. And if you get a C or above in a dual enrollment course, that we have a comparable course, you're going to get that credit's going to transfer over because it's coming from another college. But then you get to the other question, which is, well, what's easier to do? Get a 4 or 5 on the AP test, or get a C in the dual enrollment course? And it's going to vary a little bit from high school to high school and dual enrollment course to dual enrollment course. So then you get into the admission side of what's more rigorous, and that's where you also have to fall back a little bit on knowing the high school, knowing the dual enrollment system there, trying to know that as best as you can. And I'll be 100% honest with you, there's some places where I would trust that the AP course and the AP grade a whole lot more than the dual enrollment grade. And there are other places where I would see them as a little more comparable to each other, and it really just is going to depend from place to place. And that is probably a bit of an evasive non-answer for you, but it's the best one I can give.
No, it's great. It sounds like you're actually looking at analyzing the school systems. That's wonderful, as opposed to just seeing,
Because that is a thorny issue, because I think, and I don't know how you are or VCU do it, but I think there are a lot of institutions like mine that the admissions office has no control over how the credits are awarded. It's a faculty decision as to what credits are going to come in from dual enrollment and how they're going to come in, and also with AP courses. And they've set these criteria, and sometimes, especially when you've got colleges that have agreements with, articulation agreements with the community college system, and I know a lot of the Virginia public colleges in particular have that, sometimes there are mandates from above that this is what you're going to have to do, system-wide. Whether or not we actually believe that a C is good enough, it's kind of outside of our purview in the admissions office. So there's an admissions answer and there's a credit answer, I think, to that question.
Thanks.
I think you pretty much covered it. It really does depend. For us, again, in admissions, I think either seeing a student in dual enrollment or AP classes at least shows to me and our other admissions counselors that the student's pushing themselves above the just regular class that's going for graduation. So that's a good thing, that you're even looking at the two options. I think it really does come down more so to what's going to benefit them once they're actually in the university as far as transferring and having some of those credits coming in. I really do encourage students to come in with some type of credit. Now, some students take that to a whole new meaning and come in with an entire associate's degree, and that's one extreme of things. But even just having a little bit of padding to be able to play around with classes, to come in and maybe only take 12 hours a semester, something, just having a little bit of extra room is always a good idea. Again, what AP scores are going to mean credit depends, and it also depends on the score and what exam it is and what program you're interested in. So something you kind of have to do a little bit of research on to see what's going to be most beneficial for your particular student.
I'll be very brief, ditto and ditto. And I highly recommend that once you've narrowed down your list, right, hopefully the national average is about 9. I would strongly encourage your student to look into the registrar's office or the provost's office, wherever this information might reside, for dual enrollment and or credit, and or sometimes placement, advanced placement at that institution, because at Richmond, you can find it within the registrar's office in terms of what we will award credit for, including information about dual enrollment. But it's true what they said, in that we don't expect first-year students to be juniors coming into our schools. And some institutions, because literally some of the top students are applying to these institutions, whereby they really have exhausted sometimes a lot of the high school curriculum and therefore have taken college courses. As you can imagine, from a business perspective, they're not going to be interested in awarding too many credits because they're going to be thinking about, right, tuition dollars. Next question. Yes, sir.
Well, I just wanted to respond to that. As a faculty member here, I teach and chair the history department, and I can say that not in general, we are far more suspicious of dual enrollment classes than we are of AP. And we do not give automatic credit for dual enrollment, but we do for a 4 or 5 on the AP because there's an examination and we know what's on the examination. Now we're getting more and more suspicious of that examination, but that's a whole other issue. And so, but with dual enrollment, you don't know what the quality was and so on, and oftentimes the teaching and the quality of the students is lower than at the actual school sometimes. So sometimes we will give credit for dual enrollment, but we have to be presented with a case. So that's a case-by-case thing.
The other thing that can come up, and this happens for us, is if you come up with a dual enrollment course, you might get credit, but it won't count towards your major if you're majoring in that subject. Right. Or you'll still have to retake the intro level for us. You'll get 3 credits of elective credit because you did it, but we still want you to take our course because we've set it up the way we want it to be for the next 2 or 3 levels. So you sometimes we'll run into that situation as well.
That's a really good point, because people think, oh, I'm going to take calculus over the summer, but you come to business school and you're going to take calculus here too. So that was a good preview course, but you're still going to take it.
But I think the general trend is rolling back on the credit. And it's more an admissions issue than it's a good issue.
In the end of the day, I mean, I firmly believe that this is why many institutions that are residential have residential requirements, because they don't expect you to be a junior coming into your first year. Next question or comment? Praise.
I kind of have a
your next one.
A different question about demographics and just how you see. We're looking at this 4 years down the road, and I know, the baby boomers. A lot of their kids have now, have been through the system. They actually, there's a large increase in applicants. How do you see demographics, 4 or 5 years from now, and how are you guys preparing for that in each of your schools?
Let's jump in. That's a terrific question. We study demographics all the time because it's our lifeblood, as you can just imagine. And in our country, actually, we have plateaued. We don't have any more high school students. We don't have any more top high school students. The reality is that more and more students are applying to colleges, right? Because it's so easy these days to apply. guys, when we were all applying, there were a lot of different applications, right? And at some point, fee waivers, maybe unbeknownst to us, existed. So now it's so easy, you don't even have to have a stamp. You don't have to lick the thing, you just press a button. It's there. And now with Naviance at some of the high schools, it's even more convenient to apply to all these different colleges and universities. So for us, what we try to understand is, okay, there's only so many students. We're interested in a specific kind of students, right? But we're also interested in students that would need diversity for our respective campuses. So we do study a lot of census data, and sometimes we will work with third-party vendors to give us a better sense as to what perhaps our opportunities are with different markets. So at the University of Richmond, for instance, historically, we've been more or less a Mid-Atlantic and a Northeast institution. If you look at New England specifically, demographics show that there will be less and less high school students. Well, we have a wonderful foothold in southern New England. I could walk in and fill a room easily. However, at some point, many institutions are fishing in the same ponds. Now we must begin to look at other markets and grow in other markets. So we have worked very, very hard to try to identify potential markets, outreach markets, secondary, tertiary, where perhaps there are schools out there that are what we call similar feeder-like schools, where the kind of students at that institution might be attracted to a place like Richmond. We're using a lot of data and figuring out if we're going to go to this school, it makes sense for us that we have a chance, right, in having an opportunity to, you know, not everyone, but the kind of students that we want, to have them think about Richmond and perhaps even apply, and who knows, eventually matriculate to this place. So we do a lot of demographic work.
I think, spinning off of what Gil said, which I think is spot on, the other thing that we've done over the last several years at Randolph Macon is not only think about increasing the diversity of our applicant pool, and I mean diversity in every sense of that word, not just ethnic, which is kind of the common term, but also geographic, socioeconomic, interest, everything, but also trying to think of what do we need to offer to them as students. And that means everything from the academic offerings to the social activities to the environment that we set up for them as incoming freshmen in order to make these students that we're going out there trying to reach and trying to bring in and make them feel welcome and feel like they're really part of the community. And I think that we've done that very well at Randolph Macon, and we've been really cognizant of that. It's not just simply a matter of trying to go out there and recruit more and more diverse students, but also make sure that when they come, they're going to have a good experience and they're going to enjoy their 4 years. It doesn't do anybody any good for us to work so hard over the course of a couple of years to bring in a student who's just going to leave in 6 months or a year because they're not happy and they don't feel like they fit in with college. So we had to think kind of longer term than that.
I think that's, you know, with VCU, diversity is not generally something that we struggle with. We do have a lot of different students applying to our university, which is great. That's one thing that makes VCU a unique university, and we're very happy that's part of our makeup, if you will. But I think what we're paying attention to is reaching out to more students, letting them know that we're here outside of Virginia. We are a majority in-state school, so we are starting to increase those markets out of state a little bit. Generally, we've been focusing in Maryland, a little bit in New Jersey, and we're going to try and kind of move outside of that box a little bit, outside of Virginia. We love our Virginia students, but we want that name recognition to be across the country. I think we're also really paying attention, again, to bringing in the right kinds of students who are going to thrive at VCU and be really active members of our community. We're going to have a good 4 years and then go on to be good alumni and to continue to spread the word. So it's not all about, you know, numbers, let's get the most applications, about getting students to apply, yes, but then also to come and have an enjoyable experience. So it's all part of that kind of system that we do.
And one of the things we talk about all the time, we're in the business of identifying, recruiting, and enrolling happy future alumni. So in the end of the day, that is what we're trying to do. Wendy, your question.
Mine kind of goes back to the school. My kids say that their school is called Midlothian University versus Midlothian High School because they do have a very rigorous program. So it's like how many, you know, they can only handle so many AP courses, okay? But there are the kids there that will take 6 AP courses in a year and 6 AP courses. But where is it when you're looking at that school and you're looking at how many AP courses, it's like, and you're saying, you know, how much did they challenge themselves? But, okay, well, they could take 6 AP courses if their teacher said that they are, but if they feel like they can only handle 3 or they can only handle 2, I mean, how does that, how do you compare that? How do you take that into the decision? And it goes, their outside activities go into that, you know, if they're very involved in something else, and well, they're only taking 1 AP course, but look at all this that they're doing. I mean, is that how you were looking at things?
Yeah, I don't think there's a good answer for how rigorous is rigorous enough or too rigorous. It really depends on each individual student. We were talking about this in the 9th and 10th grade group, and Evelyn White and I were saying this, that we like to see students who are challenging themselves, but to challenge themselves at an appropriate level. What is always disappointing for me is when I see a student who has a full slate of AP courses or IB courses or whatever it is, but they're just getting C's and D's in all of them, because then it's clear that they're in over their head. And it may just be one course that's doing it to them. That's the trigger, and now it's spilling over and it's causing a domino effect into the other ones. And no one likes to see that. And so for a particular student, maybe only 3 is appropriate. That's strong, that's rigorous, and they're working hard to do it, but they're also still achieving well. And there is no easy fix for that. It really has to be a thing where you and your son or daughter really are communicating and talking and working with people at the school as well to figure out what's the best thing for each individual student. And as far as how we look at those students, again, it's going to depend a little from school to school, but we like to see that as well. We like to see students who are challenging themselves, but to the level that they can still handle and still do well. Now, the reality is that there are many colleges out there that are, well, not many, but there are some colleges out there that are very highly selective, and maybe a student who's only taking 3 APs might not make it, not because they can't handle it at that institution, at that university, but simply because the applicant pool that they have is what it is. It's just very competitive. Whereas there are a lot of other colleges out there that would still be able to accept that student, maybe for whom that student would be a catch, and they might be throwing scholarship money at them, and it would be a great fit for that person. I think there are very, very few colleges and universities out there, and you probably can name all of them if we sat for 2 seconds, that are so highly selective that they are splitting hairs at such a level they go, this kid only has 10 APs and he got an A-, whereas this one's got 11 and no A's. Oh, and this one, we don't want anything to do with that one. There are very few institutions that are at that level of selectivity for whom it's that much of an issue. For most of us, we're really looking for students who are pushing themselves because they're going to be pushed when they get to college. It's going to be a transition. We want them to be ready for that, but are doing so in a way that they're not digging a hole for themselves. Because when they get to college, they're going to have to think independently. They're going to have to select classes on their own. And they may call you and ask you for your advice, but really they should be the one selecting it. They're going to have to figure out how many credits am I going to take next semester. Am I going to take 14, 15, 18, 21? Don't take 21. But they're going to have to be making some of these decisions at the college level on their own. And so we kind of want to see, are they making the right decisions as a junior or senior as well?
I think we're always looking at, to Anthony's point, the individual and what else he or she will bring to the university or the college. And sometimes some of your institutions will limit how many APs a student might be able to take. And this is why we work very, very hard through our territory managers to get to know, all the different high schools in our respective territories. And of course, we're not shy. We'll email, we'll call counselors and say, so, give me an idea what 6 total APs mean out of 24, if we're not sure, or if they don't tell us, right? When they don't rate the curriculum, we will want to know. And we also reserve the right to disagree with the rating by the counselor, because sometimes certain counselors are either very liberal or, right, or they're very conservative with their rating. I mean, we've seen cases where, wow, this is rated as demanding. I really think it's at least very demanding. So, at least in our shop and other institutions that I've served, we reserve the opportunity to rate that curriculum ourselves. I think go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
you guys had some good points. I think the one thing I would say, just really quickly, is that the high school transcript can say, give us a lot of subtle clues about the students. So one thing I will say that I've always noticed is if I see a 4.0, I'm always kind of like, and then I see no AP, no honors, nothing like that. Yes, the student has gotten straight A's, but have they challenged themselves? That's up for debate. So keep that, that's the other side of the spectrum. You don't want a student pushing themselves through classes and not performing, getting all B's, C's, D's, but you also don't want a student who's clearly doing well in classes and not choosing to challenge themselves. So there's two ends of that.
Exactly. We have a little task to do, and we have to, at least if we follow our instructions, is to offer a profile of our, what do we say, incoming classes? Something to that effect. So I think this is part of the other infomercial piece that we're going to talk about. So you guys want to begin?
Are we talking?
Just profile of your typical incoming class.
Okay.
What it looks like.
GPA, that kind of stuff.
That kind of stuff.
Okay, just to make sure we're on the same page. So like I said, this incoming fall, we had about 14,000 applications for about 3,600 spots. Currently right now we have, 3,950 students coming for the fall, so that will alter a little bit over the summer. We don't have the numbers quite yet for this incoming class as far as GPA and SAT scores and ACT, but our fall 2010 accepted students, middle 50% had a GPA that ranged between a 3.22 and a 3.85, to be very specific. An SAT score just on critical reading and math between a 10-10 and a 12-20 combined. ACT composite score between a 22 and a 28. Is that right? 22, 28. So that's kind of the general. Then of course we have those, like I mentioned, arts has a little bit of a different process. And engineering's got some different numbers as well.
Randolph-Macon, we had about 4,300 applications for our freshmen. We're looking to bring in a class of around 390, but I think it's going to be closer to 395 or 400 by the time all is said and done. We also have a few transfers come in as well. For us, our middle range of GPA is actually very similar to yours. It's about the 3.2 to 3.8. The average is right around 3.5. I hate to give a middle range of GPA though, because GPAs are so different. You talk about Midlothian. Midlothian to St. Christopher's, where Jim Jump was, to Deep Run, the GPA just vary wildly. So I usually like to say is we like to see most of our students have at least a B average or above with some good challenging courses. I prefer to say it that way. Middle range of SAT scores on the original two parts is about 1,000 to 1,200. So the three parts, that's what, 1,500 to 1,760, something like that, give or take a little bit. And class rank for schools that still rank their students, it's probably the average is around the 70 percentile, give or take. But a lot of our students do not come in with the class rank. That's kind of a ballpark where they come from. Most of our students are from the Mid-Atlantic. Virginia is our biggest state. It's typically about 2/3 of our incoming freshman class each year. Maryland is always number 2. And then the other states, we have them from across the nation, but the majority of them are from the Eastern Seaboard and the South.
For Richmond, I mentioned that we are looking for a class of 770 by census date, and that is late October. So with that, I'm going to give you currently enrolled numbers. So understand that enrolled numbers could change through the summer because some students might melt, and that is they might decide to, I'm no longer interested in Richmond, I'm going to enroll at another institution. So currently, as of today, we have 818 total students. And of course, it's a little bit more because we want to pad up over the summertime because we might lose some students. So with that, we are really pleased that we're able to, in fact, the last 5 years, able to grow the applicant pool by 73%, and the last 2 years by 19%. And we have done so, I think, very thoughtfully by having the kind of students that we want at the University of Richmond, as evidenced by their strong academics, what else they will add to the campus, and of course, their diverse backgrounds. So as it stands today, we have a UR GPA that we use to convert because, to Anthony's point, there's so many different scales out there, 100 scale, 4-point, 5-point, yada, yada, yada. So right now, currently it's a 3.55 UR GPA that's converted. and that is not weighted. So given that, those schools that still rank, the kind of students that are entering for this class are typically in the top 20% of their graduating class, wherever high schools they're coming from. Also, as far as test scores go, we are on average, and I'll give you a mean and then the median, we're at 1291. So the median, which would be a lot more helpful, would be about a 1270 to about a 1370, 1360. So 25% you may assume above that, 25% below, but the median, the average mean is at 1291. As far as really what's most important is that we're really delighted that 40 states are represented, right? 10% of this incoming class are from different countries. And we're really excited because so far that's the highest we've had in terms of international students, and not including exports or what we call, students that come here as students already at other institutions. So that's purely the first year class. First generation students, where they're the first in their families to go to college, 13%. Virginia, 16%, which is still our #1 state at Richmond. And as far as students of color, 21%. We have, are pleased that we have more and more students from the South, the West, the Midwest as well. So we're working pretty hard to have the kind of student body that is really reflective of a global society. Because in the end, one of the mantras we have in our office is that we're trying to prepare students for leadership roles in society. And if we're not enrolling the kind of student that is representative, then we're doing a disservice to the university, its faculty, and its students. So there you have it, folks. We want to thank you for your time and giving up your afternoon, and please, my colleagues, a round of applause.
Thank you all so much for coming. I really enjoyed meeting you, and I hope that you found this information helpful and that you'll tell others to come join us next year, faculty, staff, and alumni. So enjoy your weekend, the beautiful weather, and feel free to email any of us with questions. There are business cards for the admission staff on the back table.
Thanks again. Enjoy.